Welcome to the Next Gen Podcast. Stepping up to the microphone are your hosts, Bryson Wright and Alex Winton. They got next, so let's get to the show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Gen Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Bryson Wright, and I'm joined by my co-host, Alex Winton, here on the Bluff City Media Podcast Network. And we got a lot to get to with this post-All-Star break stuff. But before we get to what we expect from the Grizzlies post-All-Star break, some of the stuff we've seen from the Grizzlies during the All-Star break as well, in terms of workouts and people coming back and everything, I want to talk a little bit about All-Star Weekend, because I feel like there was a lot of interesting stuff that happened. And I feel like a lot of people's kind of thought process coming out of All-Star Weekend is that the All-Star game is broken, which, I mean, it's going to be really hard, I think, in terms of I get that they want the players to play harder and everything, but it also goes on the other side of guys not trying to get hurt. So I kind of can see both sides of it, because you don't want to get hurt in the All-Star game. You know, that's just messing up your money. So I kind of get it on both sides. But I understand that most people would like to see something a little bit more competitive. And I would like to see them maybe experiment with some new stuff, because especially on the All-Star Saturday night, the skills competition is cool, but I don't know. The dunk contest is hit or miss. The 3-point contest is cool, and I love the Steph and Sabrina thing. And I hope they can continue to do that and continue to bring up some of the WNBA players, probably bringing in somebody like Clarke in the future. I know people have been talking about that. But I really like that they brought Sabrina, and that Sabrina shot from the NBA line and all that, despite all the stuff that was going on with Kenny talking during it and all that. But I enjoyed that part of it. But yeah, I would like to see them try to experiment with some new stuff. I don't know if you have any ideas that you were thinking. The one that I was thinking that I really want to see is, I want to see King of the Court in the All-Star game. 1v1, let's bring out KD, LeBron, or try bring out the bigger guys, but also try to have some better matchups, guard on guard, big on big. Why not watch Jokic and Embiid, if they were both healthy, play 1v1 in the All-Star game, or something like that, or make that a competition. I think that's one of the competitions that I've heard people talk about that I think could make it better. But overall, I thought it was a success in terms of the 3-point contest thing. I thought the Sabrina versus Steph thing was successful. The dunk contest was kind of middle of the pack in terms of the dunk contest I've seen. It's not the worst one we've ever had, definitely not, but it definitely wasn't near any of the best one I've seen either. So I thought that was cool. I think Mac McClung did deserve to win it. Jaylen Brown, the left-handed thing was pretty funny, where he put the Michael Jackson glove on his left hand and tried to dunk with it. I thought that was pretty funny. But besides that, I feel like All-Star Weekend just doesn't have the same juice it used to. The dunk contest used to be I used to look forward to the dunk contest. Now it's okay, it's the dunk contest. It's cool, right? I really feel like the 3-point contest and all that stuff is really the more exciting part. And I think that kind of goes with how basketball has shifted kind of in this generation too. I mean, it's more shooting and stuff like that. So of course the 3-point contest, I mean, like Reggie Miller was saying, dude, I think he said Larry Bird. Now I know they've changed the contest a little bit too, but he said Larry Bird won the contest with a 17, and nobody in the 3-point contest got a 17 this year. So it's just crazy to see how far that's come. But yeah, I feel like they definitely could spice it up a little bit. I think that would be my main takeaway in terms of the actual festivities.
Yeah, I mean, with the All-Star break, for real, I think a lot of it, to me, a lot of it is what it is. I mean, you could change certain things, but for me, I think a lot of it's just the change and just naturally just the progression of it. Obviously, when you have more incentive, or when you have more players making the most money they've ever made, guaranteed, then you factor in just how the leagues played. It's all everything you just talked about. I'm not surprised by it, because we've seen it in other leagues. For example, obviously I'm not saying they're gonna do this, but obviously because it's harder to do because it's a different game. But with NFL, Pro Bowl, they used to play the games. Now they got flag football for the games now. And it's been working successfully for them, but I'm simply saying like times are just changing. Like, and like you said, with the whole just to go to like the at least not the game yet, but like really the All-Star weekend, the Saturday night. Like you said, like I said, I think I've seen it on Twitter. Like the games just changed now. Like All-Star weekend now is like more like it's about almost about 3-point shooters, but like you said, most people got like a 20. Like and you would lose. Like I think some people lost like a 20, 21. Like you needed like 25 to get to like the second round. And then even then, Dame was barely missed or like almost like I think in that last round, I think he finished like 27 or something like that. Like either way, like you just have high level shooters. And even Sabrina, when she had it, I think she got like 26 or 20 something like that. And then Steph came in and just let it go. So I think that event is obviously the better one. And so I would personally, instead of getting rid of the dunk contest, because for me personally, the dunk contest, it is what it is. And I think a lot of it has to do with just the natural progression. Because when you talk about guys back in the day that had the All-Star or the dunk contest, there wasn't a lot of, not to say there wasn't high level athletes back then, but there wasn't a lot of high flyers now. Back then, like some of the dunks we saw last night, that would have been like a 10 for sure in like 1995. But we've seen everything now to this point. So it's harder. So the only really thing that you could really say or point to is be like, hey, get more stars in the contest. But a lot of those stars don't want to do it because there's no real incentive to do it. And then on top of that, it's like some of those guys are better in-game dunkers than they are like dunkers that are creative. Like that's just not them. Like, for example, like people talk about LeBron before getting in the dunk contest, but personally, I mean, he could get in the dunk contest, but like it's same thing with Jaylen Brown to me. Like Jaylen Brown, I appreciate his creativity and trying to be in it. Like I respect it for sure, but I think he's a better in-game dunker than he is like some like guy that's gonna do like something off the backboard, 360. Like he's not doing that. Like he has a lot of great posters. Like when when it's an in-game situation. So that's really the biggest thing for dunk contests. I think they should just keep doing what they're doing. Like I wouldn't mind a 1v1 thing. Like I wouldn't. But I would change the order it's in. Like I maybe start with the dunk contest or start with the skills thing. I will say this: there's no reason to change the skill competition. Why? Like before, like they shouldn't have done on Saturday. That was horrible. Why did they change something? You didn't have to fix it. The skills competition was fine the way it was. Even when they just had they brought the bigs in that one year. I think it was like 2020 when they brought like Bam. Like it was cool. But now you trying to do all these different things. Like, no, team no more. Like, no, you're doing too much. It was not broke. I'm a big believer. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And
yes, 100%.
yeah, and they did too much with that. So for me, that I would just go back to the old way with that. Keep the dunk contest, change that up, and put the 3-point contest last. Because that's really where I think, you see a lot of the hype and excitement from. But yeah, and then like for at least the Friday event, I know like people were talking about like the target score or like going back to the old game. For me, I just think you just need to increase the target score on that. But in terms of the actual All-Star game, they probably need to bring the target score back at least in the fourth quarter. But outside of changing it and making people play harder, it's gonna be hard. Like it's one of those things that obviously I want them to play harder and be better. I think, I don't like because again, like you said, you don't want people getting hurt because again, people forget that Kobe like broke his nose in the All-Star game. Like I forgot what year it was. It might have been like 2012, 2013. I forgot which year it was. Either way, he broke his nose in the All-Star game from a D-way, and it wasn't something crazy. And now obviously Kobe's a different dude. Like he gonna play through it and all that. But like that's an example. Like nobody's just trying to get hurt because then y'all gonna do all this bickering, complaining. Then somebody gets like tears something. Then you're like, oh man, like you know what I mean. So I'd much rather. I think podcast I was looking to who was it? The Dunker Spot. Shout out to Steve. I think he said I'd much rather see people complain than somebody get hurt. So like I'm like it is what it is at this point for me. But I do think there can be a happy medium. The biggest thing for me is if they could somehow recreate what the 2020 All-Star game was with the target score and how it looked and how it was competitive at the end and competitive for most of the game. I think that's the happy medium. If they can find some way to get back to how they were in the 2020 All-Star game, I think it'd be fine. But until then, it's just, it is what it is. But I mean, it wasn't bad to me. Like All-Star weekend, like you said, to me now it's just whatever, but it's not, I don't think it's all the way bad. Like obviously there's certain things that can be improved upon, but like it's not, for me, it's just, it is what it is. I care more so for now, at least about the season more so like the play, like, especially now with the home stretch of the season, teams trying to start, really figuring themselves out or whatever the case may be, and getting into the playoffs. So that's really where I'm at with it.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I think the score stuff was pretty cool, especially when they did it like or not target score every quarter, but they did quarter scores as well, because I think that did help. But I don't think target score would have fixed what happened in this last game, just because the East was so far ahead
Yeah, exactly.
already, like going into the fourth quarter. So even with that target score, like that fourth quarter wouldn't have been that competitive. But then, like we're saying, it's the All-Star game, so it's like you can only expect so much. And I think that 2020 game really did have people be like, "Oh my gosh, it's going down to the wire. It's a 1-point game. Next basket wins." All of that, and like dudes were really trying in that fourth quarter. And I think that's really kind of what the expectation is for it to be kind of close, and then in the fourth quarter, dudes go out there and close it out. I feel like that's kind of what most people would expect, but in this game, there was too much going on in terms of like the 3-point shooting between like Halliburton and Dame just sent the East so far ahead. I did like that they went back to East versus West though. I thought that was cool. I think I still like that a little bit better than the draft, just because in the draft it kind of messes some stuff up, because like there's always somebody that's going to be drafted last or whatever, and then they did the whole draft thing last year and made it a big thing right before the game, and I just don't think it kind of hit the way they were expecting it to. And I think that's kind of why they went back to the East versus West, just kind of have more. And it was crazy because going into the game, people were like, "Oh, the West team, this is the greatest team I've ever seen. This is the best All-Star team ever." And then they lost the game, and I was like, "Dude, see that?" And that's the crazy thing. But just moving on from that, I felt like All-Star Weekend overall was good, and I think it was good not only for Grizzlies fans and for us to kind of get a break from the games and everything, because that long stretch of the season, especially when they're losing games, guys are out, especially those last like 10, 12 games. Like since Job's been out, it's been like a lot of stuff going on in terms of like Job being out, Smart getting hurt, Bane getting hurt, uh, the whole team dang near being out. So it's kind of good, I feel like, to give the team a chance to kind of reset. Hopefully, we'll hear more about Bane and Smart, who both of them should be having their reevaluations coming up. So just to kind of get through this break, hopefully get some guys healthy, so that even though they're out of the race in terms of getting to the play-in and stuff, maybe so they can try to build good habits for next season as well, and to see what guys will look like playing next to Gigi, playing next to Vince, kind of like what we've seen with Jaren all season, where he's been playing with them. But I'd like to see that more with Bane on the court and with Smart on the court at times. I think obviously they'll be smart about that, to where they're not going to be playing a bunch of back-to-backs and stuff like that. But I do think that we should expect them to come back. I don't think it's going to be a thing where they just completely get shut down for the season.
Yeah, I think the thing is, I think it still is. I will say it is up in the air just because they did say it was a reevaluation. So that's really the biggest thing that I always point to is like when they say reevaluated in such and such amount of time, that means they might have another week or two to have to ramp up and stuff like that, depending. Or they probably find something and be like, hey, we decided that these guys are going to stay out. So we'll obviously get that news in the next couple weeks or so, whatever the case may be, because we are coming up on that time. But that's really, like you said, I think the biggest thing for me is kind of like for them coming back is seeing their fit next to Gigi. That'd probably be my biggest thing, because we've seen Vince with the trio. But even then, like I said, I think last pod, like I like to see Vince with this version of Vince now with the Smart or with the Bane, because again, if you're projecting these guys to be part of your core for however long, you need to see them next to players that are going to probably be the main stars of that core for the most part. So you kind of want to see all that come together, even if don't have a John Moran out there or the future guys that you're going to get, because they obviously will make moves to improve this roster. The starting center is not on this roster, or power forward, however you want to say it. They need another big. So not everybody, the roster's not complete, but like you still have some pieces that will be here next year. So that's kind of the biggest thing about them coming back. But also, like, again, just from a viewership standpoint, like I know people are diehard fans and stuff, but Grizz fans want to see their best players play. I would think you would want to see Desmond Bane play basketball. Like I know I do. I miss Desmond Bane playing basketball. It's been a month. What I think we talked about it before the pod. Like it feels like 2 years since like everybody played together. Like John Morant, Smart, Bane. It feels like 2 years because of how like it all happened in like a week span. It feels like it was so long ago that they all played. When in reality, it's only been a month. So or a month and some weeks. But either way, you kind of want to see all those guys back just from a viewership standpoint, just because you want to see your best players play. But again, they're not gonna put them in a bad situation. Like they understand that this season's not about winning a championship per se. Like they're going to look out for the long term view. That's probably what they'll do. But I'm not like if they can play, I don't think they're like you said, I don't think they're going to just sit them out. I think like you said, they'll be smarter about the back to backs in probably like 3 games or 4 nights. So like by the end of it, like April, like let's say they come back in a couple weeks or a week or two, they'll play, but then probably like late April or like or not late April, but early April, late March, you might see them sit them out like 3 or 4 games, or let guys rock out, depending on how the schedule shapes out to be. But yeah, I mean, that's part of it. But again, I think for me, I'm pro for them to come back. I'm not gonna be surprised if they don't come back, just because things happen. You don't know what the reevaluation is gonna say, but if they can come back, I want them back, just because this team's not a tanking team. This team is not like some team where it's like you're like trying to lose games. No, they're losing games, but it's just because the roster and the talent, like people are injured, they don't have the talent, like all that combination, whatever. That's their problem. It's not that they're a team that's doesn't have a direction. No, they know the direction they're trying to go in. It's just for the circumstances we've already listed for this whole season, it hasn't happened that way. So yeah, I would like to see that just from a competitive standpoint, because again, playing in me, even though these games are not meaningful, like I think Zach Kleiman's talk about it. Seeing Gigi playing games where he impacts winning and stuff like that, I think is a big thing, because by next season, that's gonna be the expectation. Even though they're young, or those guys like Vince and Gigi are young, the expectation is you supposed to be going into the next season thinking you can win a championship. I'm not saying you're gonna be the outright favorite. That's not what I'm saying at all. But you should be like, if everything breaks right, they can win a championship. You should be able to say that, like based on the metrics and all that history and all that. You should be able to say that, even if they got a couple young guys. And so that expectation should be for the team, but those players too. So by that time, they're going to play in meaningful games, and they're going to. I'm not going to say have a target on their back, but they're going to have a scouting report by that. People going to know how GG plays after these so however many 30 games, 40 games he plays. Same with Vince. So they got to really get adjusted and lock in on that. But yeah, I hope they come back, the players come back. But again, I'm not like gonna be surprised if they don't. This is like it's really 50-50 to me, up in the air.
Yeah, I see that. I feel like they will come back just because, like you said, I feel like the Grizzlies, just as an organization, haven't been one for like super tanking
Yeah,
necessarily. Like I feel like obviously maybe some of the injuries you could have said maybe these guys could have played through something, but I do feel like most of the time when guys are sitting out, it's because they actually have something wrong with them. And I feel like, a lot of the guys like we're talking about, we literally saw them go down in the games and stuff like that. So like especially when you come to like Bane and Smart, like it was everybody saw that. Like Bane's ankle dang near hit the floor,
it touched
right?
earth. Yes, it
Yeah.
touched earth.
So like 6 weeks, like I look, I don't think like maybe they're being I think they're being precautious about it. And if that's what you're saying, yes, I think they will be. They'll take precautions. They'll be cautious, all that kind of stuff. But I don't think it's necessarily like the same of they've never been a team that'll just outright tank. And I think if Bane and Smart and them are healthy, they will come back. But talking about GG and them playing in games that matter, even though it's not, the playoffs or them fighting for the play-in, I think them playing against teams where the games matter more to them than they do to the Grizzlies is also important. So if you're playing a team like they did on TNT, they're playing the Bucks on TNT, and then GG and Zaire both outplay Damian Lillard. Now, I'm not saying that's something that's going to happen consistently, but it's like that's a good sign, right? Zaire had, his best game of his career basically, was doing step backs on Giannis. Like what? What was I don't even know what's going on in that game. But like, there's so many like good signs and stuff when they're playing these teams that are supposed to be like upper echelon teams in the NBA. And I think that's the thing that I'm gonna look forward to more because obviously a lot of the times these games, they're out there, they're playing for development more like that at this point. And even though they might lose some of the games, might win, you know how it is. But I think that when you look at them against these other good teams and the way they've played, like they played the Knicks pretty close, even though they have to come back. They beat the Bucks. And then like the past few weeks, I feel like they've been playing these like really good teams pretty closely. And I think if they can continue to kind of learn how to win with this lineup they have now, I mean, obviously they won like the last two games going into the All-Star break. So that's a good sign as well. But it just makes me think that if they had Bane or they had Smart in some of these games, like they wouldn't be as far behind as they are. And it really is just like I know that Smart also got hurt early in the season too, but seeing the way that they've kind of come together and win these games, it's like, man, I really wish that they hadn't started so bad because it's almost like confusing on how they like started that bad. But I mean, obviously they got some other guys that either were traded and stuff like that. Obviously, Ja's been out the whole time, but it feels like this second stint of Ja not playing like since he got injured they've been way better than they were at the beginning of the season. That's not even like a question. Even though they also haven't had Bane in this stretch, it feels like the team is playing better now than they were at the beginning of the season. So a lot of that could be like rhythm stuff and stuff like that as well. But I also think it's just like these young guys are learning and developing and kind of understanding what their role is on the team, and then Gigi actually playing more minutes. Now, I think that if they had Gigi early in the season, now I think he did need a little bit of time in the G League. I think that did help him out, kind of learn what it means to be a professional basketball player and on that kind of thing. I think from a basketball perspective, if they had thrown him out there game one out of 82, he probably could have hooped like game one out of 82. But I still think like on the other side of like learning what it means to be like a professional, because they talked about he had some fines and had to get through that kind of stuff when he first started. I mean, dude was 18, right? I remember what I was like when I was 18, dude. There's no way I should have been on an NBA team. I would have been missing practice. I would have been waking up late, like all that kind of stuff, man. Like it happens. So it's kind of like he kind of had to learn what it actually means to be a professional. And I think that the G League and everybody on the Memphis Hustle staff and everything, I think they did a really good job of getting that through to him and then putting him in situations with the hustle that he was also going to be in with the Grizzlies, not making him just, go off the dribble the whole time. Because when I did watch those hustle games, they did a lot of stuff of running him off screens. He was getting catch and shoot opportunities in the corner, which is like, yes, they do want you to put the ball on the floor, but if you can learn how to score easier, it'll open up everything else. And I think you've now seen that in the way he's played because I mean the three ball has been awesome. The 3-point shooting has been like his main value, but I think that it's now opened up him to put the ball on the floor because dudes are actually closing out on him. Now, like at the beginning of like they weren't closing out super hard on Gigi when he first came in. But it's almost like they come in like they don't have a scouting report. They don't really know what you can do. Now they're like, now that they know that you can shoot, you're getting harder closeouts. You can attack those closeouts. And I think that's what he's done at a high level. And I think that's the stuff that was on film that I'll continue to say, like, I have no idea how he fell to 45. I know there were some other concerns and off the court stuff, I guess, but I didn't think it was that big of a deal. Like I think it was something about like, oh, he was on Instagram and he was mad at his coach. Like, okay, whatever. Like, usually that's not the kind of stuff that'll make NBA teams completely pass on an 18-year-old dude with this much potential. But I'm not complaining about it because it helped the Grizzlies out tremendously. And I'm glad that he's now kind of proven that he has that talent and proven that despite all the stuff they said about him, like he just had to grow up a little bit. Like that's all it was. Like he was 17 when he started playing college basketball, right? And I think that that's what we've really seen. And I think that his growth is definitely one of the blessings in disguise, just for all the stuff that's happened this year. But I think that's why I'm gonna keep saying I hope that these guys get back, and I hope that Brandon Clarke can get back as well. Even though I know it, now, if it's risky, like don't bring him back. I get it. If the doctors are like, hey, we're not sure, don't do it. But if he's cleared by the doctors and Brandon Clarke says, hey, I'm feeling good, I mean, based on what we saw this weekend, which I'll let you kind of get to that next too, with him working out with Jaron and then Zaire, all of them being in Turks and Caicos doing some drills. Brandon Clarke is dunking the ball again and everything like that, and is looking better. If he feels good, the doctors think he's good. I'd like to see him play the rest of the season whenever he can come back, because we just hit the 1 year mark of when he originally got injured, and that's about the time you'd expect. About a year of recovery time after that surgery.
Yeah. To your point about just the totality of the whole thing, like the Grizzlies starting the season the way they did and all that, just how it's going. Like I've always said, it's a long season. So like in that one season, it can feel like for any team, it's like 5 or 6 seasons because of how things shape out to be and things of that nature. Because like you said, like a lot of things have changed back then. I think they are playing a lot better now or before the break, even if the results ain't there, because a lot of it's just again a different talent. Like you're playing better players. Like obviously Gigi and Vince Williams are better players than the players that were playing at that time. You were playing David Roddy a lot of minutes, John Contar a lot of minutes. Trying to remember who else was playing those minutes, but just Zaire. Like you had a lot of guys playing minutes that just weren't really being productive from an offensive standpoint, but also sometimes defensively. And it's still the same. Like for the most part, it's still the same. But I think obviously the defense is improving a lot. That goes to chemistry and stuff like that. I think again, it just takes a while because people don't understand like defense is about more so everybody being, excuse me, everybody being on the string, and basically like everybody has to be on the same page with the chemistry. And when you don't have a lot of guys that are playing minutes together, your chemistry is going to be off. So hence why. Now, granted, some of the defense is just basic principles, and a lot of that again, you can say when people complain about Jenkins, it's like they overhelp a lot, which again can be to him, but it's also on the player too to understand. Hey, maybe I shouldn't help too. Like it's a two-way street for me. But I just think that's part of it. Just they're playing different players. Guys are more comfortable in their roles. Maybe the coaching got better. I think Jenkins has done some good things. Maybe simplify the offense. So like it's a lot of different things that happen because you got to think. First 25 games was like pre-Ja, like without Ja. Then those 9 games was with Ja. Then you had a whole different version of the roster without Ja. After that, because Smart came back, Smart and Luke weren't back, and then they came back. Then basically after the whole week, it's like, okay, now this is a whole different team injured wise. Then after that, you had the trade deadline and you traded some people and brought some people in. So like it's just a whole that's like 4-5 different seasons, quote unquote, that I just named. Now you have this other season where it's like, oh, okay, post All-Star break. You can be a totally different team, or maybe the team you saw at the end of the All-Star or right before the All-Star break. So it's a lot of different things that have gone on. But like, I mean, for me, I just think, again, all of it has worked out how it's supposed to work out. Same with the GG thing in terms of his draft stuff. Like, obviously, him get drafted low was kind of like, okay, like, for me, like, I know some people are like, I can't remember who said it, but they're like, I don't know how I saw this. And I'm just like, I get it to the sense of like, you might not see him like to translate, like in terms of right away or the situation might not. But I think when you see Gigi, the talent was always there. It was never a question of talent. Like it's just about like, can you fit within the confines of a system and be a role player first, and then show off the star qualities or traits that you have. I mean, that's like I've always said, like that happens to every player. Like we've seen it over the course of time. We saw it with one of our players in Desmond Bane. You get a role, you do good at that role, and if you do good at that role, you're going to get more leeway to do more. It just happens like that, and that's going to be the same thing for Gigi. And that's what's happened now so far. He will start as a catch and shoot guy, and that's mainly his role now, catch and shoot right now. But once he starts to continue to or stay good at what he's doing, he gets to do more. And so, I think again, people wanted Gigi to play early. I know I said he needs to stay in the G League, and I thought he did, and I think he did. But again, a lot of it, I think the G League, like you said, did help because his growth was better in the sense of I think he learned how to play winning impact basketball without having to score and having a high usage, which is going to, and again, he was already decent as a non-high usage guy. He's better play finisher in AAU when he was playing, versus at South Carolina where he had the ball in his hands as the number one guy at 18 years old on a college team, Division I college team in a major conference in the SEC. Like that's a lot. It's a lot different in terms of the context. So, he's playing better. Obviously Vince now too, you know, he started out, not playing catch and shoot guy. And then he was able to do more on the ball and stuff. So like, you got, and then obviously Jaren's growth, you got to think, he's become better as a playmaker in some aspects. Been one of the best isolation scorers in the post. So like, there's a lot of different things that had to take time to develop. And obviously, again, the season hasn't gone how it wanted, but like I always say, it's going to work out how it's supposed to work out. Like, yeah, the season's going to be bad, but then probably next season you turn around and end up winning 50-some games and having good success in the playoffs because of what happened this year. So, you kind of have to look at it like that from that perspective, because again, this is the life cycle not every team, but every team's not like good, like for 20 years. Like you can't be the Spurs all the time. Like even the Spurs have had down years. Even like when I'm trying to think, Golden State in their dynasty had down years. Like it happens to everybody. Like it's part of the process. Like it's just, you're not going to be good every year. Like that's just sports. Like most teams are not the Patriots or 49, like all these dynasties. Even in those dynasties, they have quote unquote down years. Like it just happens. So, it's part of the process. So yeah, I mean, I hope guys get back and I hope guys continue to play well. That's really my biggest thing. Even if guys will come back, I hope what we saw these last 2 or 3 games with the Grizzlies, I want to see the whole time. Like I want to continue to see Lamar Stevens play well. I want to continue to see Jordan Goodwin play well, Vince Williams, Udom when he plays, Conchar, like all these guys out here, and then if you get guys back in that, I hope they play well. Like, because again, man, you want to see a good product or like guys playing at least, I won't say hard. I mean, because again, that playing hard conversation can get overblown, but like at least playing well and focused basketball. Let me say that. I want to see them play focused, concise basketball, try to win the game, competitive. And then, you live with the results. You might win some, you might lose some, but again, the process right now is more about the process than it is the result right now. You want to see you want their process to be good, because when they get more talent and that process is good, then they're going to skyrocket. But if your process is bad and you have talent, it's not going to work. Like that's just how it is. Like your process, it all starts with the process and the basics. If your basics and your foundation is not good, then nothing else really matters. So that's what I care about going forward as the season continues.
Well, yeah, and I like that you mentioned that. Obviously, the Grizzlies are like they gotta win a lot more to even get in those conversations. But talking about like even a lot of the great sports dynasties had down years. I mean, the Spurs don't get Tim Duncan if David Robinson doesn't break his foot, right? And that changed the entire course of their franchise. Now we'll see how high the Grizzlies pick ends up being, but I still think that with this lottery pick and everything like that, obviously I think some people have said this isn't a good draft, whatever you could say, but I think that if they do get, top 2, top 3, if they get lucky and get one of those, or even if they get like a top 7 pick, there's a lot of guys that you could look at that you could see that could kind of set them on the right track. Obviously, I'm not saying there's any Tim Duncans that they can just go and get. That would be awesome if they could. I don't know if there's any of those in the draft, but it's one of those things where if they do get that lottery pick and they use it the right way, if they get a good center, if they get lucky and get a guy like Alex Sarr, or even if they get a lower pick and they come out with Donovan Clingan or Kyle Filipowski from Duke or somebody like that, like those are some of the other guys people have said. I think they could help. I don't know if that's necessarily putting you right there as your contender right now, just from that draft pick, though. I still think they would probably need to bring in another big man and probably a backup point guard, possibly. But there's a lot of people that are also saying maybe they use that pick on a backup point guard and they try to go after a guy like Rob Dillingham, right? So there's a lot. I feel like there's a lot of different avenues that the Grizzlies can use to get back to competing, and I think that's the best thing that I can say for like this post All-Star break and the rest of the season is that based on what happens, like there's still a lot of stuff that's up in the air. And until we know exactly what pick the Grizzlies have, I don't have like a ton to say about, oh, we should draft this guy over this guy, or this dude is better than this dude. Because at the end of the day, you can do all that, and you can do all that, and I feel like you can end up wasting time talking about dudes that will never be on your team. Like you can do all that and be like, oh yeah, I'd rather have this guy versus this guy. And then if you get the third pick, all right, we're not getting either. We're getting something. It completely changes what you're gonna do. So I think that's the hard part. With just it's basically waiting to see where they fall in the lottery, and I think that's gonna be that's going to have a big impact on what next season looks like and what exactly they do. So, like, when it comes, I'm not saying you can't have your prospects that you like and say the Grizzlies need to get this guy or whatever. I'm just saying it's really hard to point at, okay, yeah, the Grizzlies should definitely get this guy no matter what. And I'm like, I don't know if I can say no matter what, because, I mean, if they get the number one pick, they're not going to get that guy, right? And so, and I think that's going to be the hard part. I could also see them. I still could see them very well trading the pick. Like, I still think that's very well a possibility, especially if you can end up getting a true center that can play next to Jaren, and that's like I'm just throwing it out there. Like, if you could get like a Jared Allen type of dude or something, I'm not saying if you get the number one pick, trade it. But if it's like top 6, top 7, and that's part of a package, I want to be mad at it. If you're getting somebody who is a guaranteed day one starter, but if you can't get somebody who's like a day one starter, either most likely at center, then I'd rather them just use it. But there's still like so much stuff that has to go into that, like I said.
Yeah, and I think what you're getting to is that they have the option. Like they have options, I should say, and that's really the biggest thing. Like they have the options to do a lot of different things, but again, they won't do anything until they know where they land. And I mean, again, like because because you kind of reference what everybody's been talking about the pick and stuff like that on Twitter. It's just like, yeah, like you don't know if these guys are who they're gonna get and where they're gonna land. Like, I mean, I talk about the guys I like for the Grizzlies, but I don't know where they're gonna land. Like Johnny Furphy from Kansas, but he might be like late lottery. They're not gonna if they get number one, they're clearly gonna take Sar. Like that's no question. Now, granted, they could be like, or they might not like Sar. We don't know. I don't know. Listen, I'm not in these Grizzlies draft rooms. I wish I was, so I could talk to Zach and be like, hey, don't draft this dude. Maybe consider this dude because there's a couple people in the past drafts where they've been good and they Grizzlies could have got them. So I'm a little upset about that still. But they can right their wrongs. But on a serious note, they could really, like again, like I don't know what their draft board is. Like, so like they might not like Sar, or, at number one, they're like, okay, we don't really like any of these prospects. Let's trade this pick. They could do that too. They're not gonna just trade it for nothing, or like if they don't get number one or top 3, top 4, they're like, hey, we're gonna trade down, do a pick swap and get a player back and still have a pick. Like they got a lot of options out of that pick. That it just gives them another asset to use to build this roster, whether they keep the pick and draft somebody that helps, or they pick somebody that helps in a couple years, or they trade it for somebody like either way, it's going to all benefit them. It's because again, it's an asset. And in small markets, you're not going to turn down assets, especially in the first round. Like that's just not going to happen. So they're going to do whatever. But again, it's hard to say like what they're going to do because they have no idea where that pick's on land. Like even though I think the lottery is rigged, that doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter until the actual lottery happens. So, people talk about the pick. Yeah, it's cool, but yeah, don't get too up in arms about if they traded or not because we have no idea where the pick's going to land. Like it's just a not wasted conversation, but it's not a productive conversation because it's like, okay, like, yeah, we don't know. Like it's a big range. It fluctuates because in this draft where there's not, because people like to say it's a weak draft. It's a weak draft depending on where your team is at. For the Grizzlies, it's not really a weak draft because they need more role players and guys that fit next to the guys that they have as star players. If they didn't have any star players, yeah, the Grizzlies would be kind of like if you was like if the Grizzlies were like Washington, where again, Washington I think have done some good things like they're in terms of rebuilding. They're not gonna get their star guy this draft. Probably that next draft is where they get their guy, but they can still get a good foundational piece. Or like if I'm trying to think of another team that's down in dumps. I won't say down in dumps, but like the team's not good. That's in a worse situation. But either way, y'all get my point. It's not like we're not in a dire situation where we need to get a franchise changing guy. We got our franchise changing guy. He's in a shoulder sling. You got your defense player here. He just has no help right now. It's just him. He's the only star player on the court. And then you got another guy, Bane, who he's not in the boot, but he's still not playing. So you got your star guys, and that's what the contract said. You got your 3 to 4, or really your 3 high level max guys, you would per se, quote unquote. So they can find a guy that fits what they need. It's just about what the roster is going to look like who's going to be available in free agency. Because like you said, if they get a center, like if they get number one, they could probably, I would think, I hope they like Sarr. I like Sarr. They probably just draft Sarr because I think he's that good where he could come in and start day one. Now, and then he'd be fine. But even then, you could still get some more help, and they probably will, but they might not have to get a starting level center now since you think Sarr's a starting level center. If they don't get one, that you know what I mean, like could still draft a wing and still go get another big and another vet wing. Like they can still do all that. So I just think they have options. So people should understand and look at it as like they got a lot of options, and when you have a lot of options, that's good for you because you don't want to be pigeonholed to one, two different things. Because like you said, I remember, just a real quick story. I remember when the jaw draft, like I remember when the Grizzlies were bad. I was like, oh, we're going to get, like, I was looking at 7-8 range. I'm like, oh, we're going to get like Cam Reddish or like Darius Garland maybe if he falls because of his injury. And then that lottery happened. We moved up to 2. I'm like, oh, snap. Oh, now we're going to get Ja Morant. Mind you, I had no idea we were going to get Ja Morant. Nobody did. But, things changed that quickly on that day. So, you can't get too pigeonholed on 2 prospects or 3 prospects and be like, oh, we're going to get these guys because you don't know what's going to happen. So just let it play out how it's supposed to play out. They're going to play the games, win or lose, regardless. Then when you get to the offseason, then when you get to May, when they do the lottery, they'll have a better idea where to go. And you'll have a better idea of how to look at prospects instead of looking at them now saying, oh, we got to have this guy. No, we don't know. We don't know. We have no idea. Unless you know somebody in the league, unless you know Adam Silver. But, I don't think anybody, no disrespect to anybody, I don't think anybody knows Adam Silver. So,
well, I definitely don't. I definitely don't know Adam Silver. If I did, I'd have a lot more insight for y'all. But yeah, no, that's kind of what I'm getting at is you never really know what can happen when it comes to the lottery. I do agree with you. I think it's a little bit rigged. I'm just gonna be honest. I think it is a little bit rigged. They know what they're doing when it comes to that kind of stuff. But I also think that when it comes to, like you said, going into that season where you're not really 100% sure what pick they were going to get and they move up to 2. I remember going into that draft, there was a lot of people that were kind of hoping they would convey the pick to Boston.
I was with
Yes.
them.
There's a lot of people that were like, they don't even want the pick because it should go to Boston. And then that way we can get our pick next season and we can start to rebuild in the next year. Right? Well, things changed just that fast. Now you got the number 2 pick, you got Ja Morant, and you're in the playoffs in 2 seasons, right? So it's just that's how quickly things can change when it comes to like the draft and the lottery and everything like that. And that's why I haven't been getting too much into like who are they going to pick yet. That's going to be more of like an off-season thing and like a post-lottery. Like once the lottery happens, we can talk about the draft pick every episode. But just like right now, it's just like I just don't know because it's just hard to really necessarily know exactly where it's going to be. And I do think that since the team has actually, I don't know. Obviously I'm an optimist, and I always feel like if those guys come back and the other guys have kind of developed a little bit more, if that happens, they might end up being like the 8th or 9th pick too. Like I think that's definitely a possibility because I think right now they would be 7th. So it could go either way over these last like 20, 30 games. But and I think that's like the main thing that I'm gonna continue to say is not to say that you can't be mad or you can't have discussions about draft picks or whatever. But it's hard for me at this point because it's like you don't really know what's gonna happen yet.
Yeah, exactly, bro. It's just you just don't know. Nobody really knows, man. It's just funny because people again, and I get it. People want to be open minded. Listen, have your prospects. Like you might see me, and you will not might you will see me. I've done it this last week. I'll say, oh, he's a future Grizzly. I say it all the time. I've done this for years. Like who was it? I think it was what's the dude's name? It's Max Christie's brother. He plays with Minnesota, University of Minnesota. He's good. I said he future Grizzly. Johnny Furphy, future Grizzly. Montas Buzelis, future Grizzly. Like I've been saying this, but I don't know if they're gonna be real future Grizzlies. I'm just kind of speaking into existence. But those are prospects I like for the Grizzlies. So I'll say that. And I think people have their prospects that they like, but there are certain people that are saying like, well, they get the pick and they trade it. Like it's just a disastrous mistake. Well, bro, we don't even know the details of the pick per se, or like what the details of that trade would be. Because if they get like a player back and then future picks, like if they get a starting level player back and then get not only a pick in this draft, but maybe a pick for 2025, that's a bad deal. I mean, I wouldn't think so personally, depending on what that deal is. If they don't have to give up any picks outside of that one, I think that's a good deal. But again, we don't know the details. It's just all hypotheticals at this point, and which is cool. I think it can have a good discussion, but I think people have to understand when you have a discussion, you can agree to disagree, have disagreements without like bantering or fighting about it. Like it's really not that. It's never that serious. I promise you, it's never that serious. You can have respectful conversations and have disagreements and stuff like that about what they should do. So that's all. That's all I'm gonna say. Just be respectful about it. Just be cool about it, man. Enjoy what and find the positives. That's what, like you said, optimism. Find the positive in the season. Be happy Gigi Jackson was like an NBA player or maybe more. Be happy that he could be a starting small forward for us in like year 3 or year 4. Like, be happy about that. Or look like, oh, these guys got these guys on low money. So now we have more time, to get more players around them. Like, be happy about that. Be happy that these guys are young. This could be way worse. I promise you. I've seen teams try to hold on too long, and in that 1 year they get hurt and it is over. AKA, shout out to no disrespect to my friends that are fans of this team, the Portland Trailblazers. Like, it's different when you have Dame and who's like 35 and he get hurt and it's over. And then everybody else get hurt and it's over. No, Josh 24 or 20 or no, 24, Jared's 24, Bane's 25. Like, these guys are very young. It's okay. I promise you, it's gonna be all right. It could be way worse. I promise you. I've seen way worse. I said it before and I'll say it again. Last thing. 20. Remember, I just want everybody to remember when you look at all this the stuff that the Grizz are going through right now. Think back to 2018, 19, like right before the job draft, like when everybody, not when everybody get fired, but like when during that season when they traded Mark, they were trying to, when they clearly said they're gonna trade Mark and Mike. That and when everybody, all the reports about people, like you had, like I said, Stephen A saying like move the franchise and all this other stuff, like people was talking about it, like it was bad. I don't think people remember how bad it was. So to be from where that is now or where it was then to now, I promise you, it's not that bad. So just try to find the positives, man. It could be way worse in terms of the situation they're in. So just try to find a positive in the season, man. Don't be too over mad or emotional about it. I understand you're gonna have emotions as fans. I get it, but just try to put some perspective into it. Is what I'll say.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely with you on that one. But like I said, we're definitely gonna get into more draft stuff like probably later in the season as we kind of figure out where the Grizzlies will be and stuff like that. But for now, I'm kind of focused on this last stretch. Let's see what can the Grizzlies do post All-Star break. Obviously, like I said earlier, they're kind of out of the hunt when it comes to the playing game and stuff like that. But it's more like seeing can they build some better habits and everything, especially from like the young guys like Gigi. And I'd say like for the All-Star break, obviously I'm gonna keep saying what I've been saying, man. We're watching Vince and Gigi for their development. Hopefully Bane, Jaren, and Smart can come back. Hopefully we'll get to see Brandon Clarke. And I think from the videos we've seen, like we saw him shooting jumpers, saw him running around, saw him dunk the ball for the first time since last year. And I mean, I don't know like how exactly how he feels, but I'd expect him to probably play a few games, even if it's not that many, just to see how he feels. And he'll definitely be on a minutes restriction, stuff like that. I won't expect him to play that much, but I think just seeing him back on the court would do a lot, and getting him back on the court would do a lot for his confidence in his Achilles and everything going into next season too. So I think that's like I'm continuing to say, building habits for next season, building confidence for next season, and then hopefully the injuries will not be the same next year, man, because this has been some unprecedented. Like I would say, I can't believe it if it hadn't happened to the Grizzlies before. Like this is the second time we've had unprecedented injuries because back in that year when they had the most different players to ever play on a team, that also happened. But it's like, wow. So like having 13 out of 15 guys that are on regular contracts out for a game. And then having guys like we talked about a little bit about Jordan Goodwin earlier, signed that dude to a 10-day contract, played one game, and then the second game he's starting. Like it's crazy. And then even that we didn't even get to. I should have mentioned this earlier. Then they came out. Scottie Pippen Jr. got hurt right after we released the last episode. it was like right after we record. We literally talked about it every time we record. Something happens. So hopefully between the time this records, we're recording this on Thursday. Grizzlies play Clippers on Friday. Probably gonna release this on Friday afternoon. Hopefully nothing happens between now and Friday. But I don't know. But it feels like every time we do this, it feels like something else came out. And then, but yeah, Scottie Pippen Jr. out for like 3 weeks with a back injury. I think obviously, like I said, not to say that he's not hurt, but I think it's one of those things where they want him to have a stretch at the end of the season where he can play all those games. And if you look at it, if he misses about 2 weeks, based on how his two-way contract works, it would basically be like when he comes back, he would probably be able to just play all the rest of the games in a row rather than being in and out of the lineup like he has been so far, because you can only play so many games when you're on that two-way contract.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it is just funny how some things just always happen because yeah, like you said, it's been a crazy season with the injuries. We've had it before, but it's just funny. Like, cause yeah, yeah, I just think that the injury thing is something because like with Scottie Pippen, he got hurt or not hurt. Well, he got hurt, but then the news came out. It's just I wasn't even surprised by that time. So, oh, okay, that happens to us at this point. Like I'm just used to it. Same with Ja, because I was joking. I didn't say it on the timeline. Well, no, I didn't say it on the timeline. I said that Ja thing will be interesting. That update will be interesting. Then I said in other group chats, I said, wait till that Grizz PR Ja tweet hit. Sure enough, just stuff like that. It's just you just used to it. But like I said, there is some positives. Obviously, like he might be able to finish at that stretch. Same with BC playing a couple games, getting confidence, see if he has improved as a player. But hopefully, just really getting a rhythm of confidence, conditioning, and all that. So there's still some stuff to be looking forward to. But again, we'll have more in the next couple weeks, obviously, because they're going to give an update. They're not just going to be like, oh, we're not going to give an update on Smart and Bane. Like they're just not going to do that. They gave an update at the trade deadline, but that's not a real update. I'm talking about like a Grizz PR update or like a Coach Jenkins update. We're gonna get one. I don't know when or where, but we're gonna get one. I know, like I don't know, but we're gonna get it from one of those sources. Just it's all about a matter of like the timing and all that.
Yeah, well, it should be within these next couple, like next week or two, like you said, because it's been just about 6 weeks. I think it'll be 6 weeks on Sunday from when Bane got hurt, and I think it'll be 6 weeks. I think the day that we release this will be 6 weeks since Marcus Smart's injury. So that was the original timeline they gave. I wouldn't expect it to come out over the weekend. It probably wouldn't come out until like Monday, Tuesday, maybe. We'll see exactly how that works. But like I said, I'd expect it to be soon. But yeah, and then just before we close, just talking about the season in general. Alex, you sent it to me, the video from the latest video that went on John Morant's channel where he was talking about actually how he got hurt. And it was like, dude, he said he was just warming up. Like he wasn't even practicing. He said he was just rotating his shoulder, just like I'm doing right now, doing some, warm ups, and it just locked up. And it's just like, man, like that, and it's just like stuff like that. It's just like this how you know, look, this just wasn't the season. Sometimes this is not your year, and like this year just isn't the year. Now we'll see. Hey, maybe next year it'll be different because we've seen it in the past where like we were talking about it earlier. Dunk, talking about the Spurs getting Tim Duncan because David Robinson broke his foot, and then you go back a couple years, it didn't work out for him. But remember, Curry and Clay were both hurt, and then when they finally came back, they won the championship, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
not saying that they're definitely going to win it all next season, but it's like we have seen teams have this and then bounce back in good ways, and I think that they're set up to do that, and I think that's what I'm most excited about.
Yeah, and another one, Denver, like when they had Jamal Murray out and they missed like the whole year. Then you had MPJ, I think the year before missed the whole year. No, actually, I think MPJ and Murray missed that whole year. So like, and then they came back next year or last year and won chip. So like we've seen it before, man. But yeah, like that Josh stuff was funny, man, because how he said he just literally moved his shoulder and he was like, oh, like just said, oh, it shouldn't be funny, but again, it was funny just how he is talking about it. Y'all should go watch the video. And it's just like, because I remember the big discussion about that, and everybody's like, oh, why was he practicing so hard? How did it happen in the practice? Literally, it happened in the practice, and it happened just by him doing like a normal human movement. It wasn't like he just got hit or he fell. But again, it was an overuse type of injury anyway. But that was probably like the quote unquote breaking point of it happening. Like it was going to happen anyway, whether that was going to be on the injury or somebody. It just happened. So happened, to be from stretching. But like you said, sometimes it's just tall tale signs just not your year. Like this should have been a tall tale sign when Ja got hurt, and like I said, the weak stretch. You win the game, Smart get hurt. Next game, Bane ankle touch hurt. That should tell you right there what happened. It probably not your year. Just the week span. A week. I'm telling you, just a week, 7 days. Not even like 2 or 3 weeks. A week span and you lost it. Not everybody, but you lost like basically three of your top 4 players. Like in that week span. Like sometimes it is what it is, man. But again, focus on the positive. That it could be worse. There's a lot more to look forward to. I promise. I just have a hard time believing there's not. You just don't go through all this just to not have something good on the way. I promise. There's something good on the way. I don't know what, but there's something good on the way.
Definitely, for sure. And like I always say, I appreciate everybody who listened to this week's episode of the Next Gen Podcast here on the Bluff City Media Podcast Network. As always, I was joined by my co-host Alex Winton, and I'm your host Bryson Wright. And we'll continue to put out great content, continue to go through the rest of this season, and get into this off season and everything as well. Hope everybody had a great All-Star break. Hopefully everybody is now ready to get back for this last stretch. We'll see y'all on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Next Gen Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a like and a comment wherever you download your podcasts. Head over to www.bluffcitymedia.co, where you will find comprehensive coverage of all things Memphis sports and how you can become an insider. We'll see you back here next time.